Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Tech Sparks again, the 11th edition. I hope it's rocking your fortunes. I hope you're networking. I hope you're learning from different entrepreneurs. And today I've got two senior people who are going to come and talk about leading in an era of digital transformation, how technology is shaping the new normal. We'd love to find out what the new normal is during the COVID. To answer that, we have Anant Arora, Senior Director, Product Management and Merchandising Products at Lowe's India. Hi, Anant. How are you? I've got
Thank you
Jyoti.
very much for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Anant. Glad to have you here. I've got Jyoti Ahuja, Director of Engineering at Intuit, and I am Vishal Krishna, your ringside or fireside moderator, whatever you want to call it. But before we go any further, digital transformation, right, Jyoti, Anant, everybody talks about SaaS transformation. They talk about cloud transformation. They talk about open APIs, conversational AI. They bring in all these things. And for a young SMB out there, I mean, the founder of an SMB maybe may not understand what digital transformation is, let alone the consumer, right? So I'd like to know from both of you. Jyoti, I'd start with you. Perhaps how is the Indian SMB looking at digital transformation? And Anand could probably speak about more from the consumer angle and all the brands that they work with, which is also a B2B side, right? On how they look at digital transformation, and Lowe's being a global company, including Intuit, you guys can bring in some great knowledge here. Please, Jyoti.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Vishal, for the welcome, and nice to meet you all. When we speak about the small businesses as the SMBs of the industry and how digital transformation is touching them, I think the first thing that we have noticed is that even in the Indian market, where we perceive that the tech is not touching a lot of people, I think the past decade of the smartphones has already made quite a big wave in it, and that helped significantly when the pandemic hit us, where our grandparents were using the Zooms just like as if they were born with it. And the same thing is also from a mindset perspective, because that's the biggest challenge. The mindset is the biggest challenge, and then the technology comes next. So my point is, from a mindset perspective, I think that barrier has been a little loose over the past decade or so. And therefore, when the pandemic hit us, what could have happened with respect to technology in the next 3 to 4 years actually happened in the past few months itself. And from the SMB's perspective, yes, indeed, there was a struggle for the first few months because it was so unexpected when the pandemic started. But I think what we are seeing from the SMBs that we are working with, that they are embracing the change in a pretty positive manner, and they are also very open and enthusiastic and optimistic about making a turnaround to their businesses. And the things that they are trying out and are very open are taking help from others, like employing other companies to change and make them more available on WhatsApp, Facebook, because a lot of brick and mortar shops are coming directly on Facebook. Like, there is no PC, there are no servers, cloud, SaaS. It's just coming from home to the phones directly. And that's kind of the transformation that is happening with SMBs, and it's very positive to see how our small business owners are taking it in their stride in a very positive manner.
And from an Intuit's perspective, after COVID, did you see a spike from Indian SMBs downloading your app, or do you see professionals downloading your app? What is the color there?
Right. So Intuit basically is, from a small business's perspective, offers an application that manages their business for people. And from that perspective, yes, there is a significant higher interest now, because people want to more and more focus on the biggest problem for themselves, which is to get new consumers. They don't want to be worried about how should I run my business and how to do accounting and payroll. They wanted to offload that to companies like Intuit, such that they could focus on consumer acquisition, which is the first problem, and the second one being the cash flow. So those were the two things that they want to focus on, and not on how to run the business. And to your point, exactly, yes, that's the trend we are seeing as well.
Anand, Lowe's, obviously big retailer in the US, building product out of India for the global organization. I think it's several folds to, I mean, the consumer is the center of everything for Lowe's, right? I mean, people have to come to stores. There was contactless happening. So what is Lowe's experience? And I mean, do people really understand digital transformation? Because ordinary people simply forget. There's, when you talk about contactless delivery, contactless experiences, that's a sort of digital transformation also.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just extend some of the thoughts. Right? I think you rightly
Yes,
questioned that.
please.
Do people really understand what digital transformation really means, right? And my sense is that, do they need to? What has happened is the consumer habits have changed, right? The shopping habits have changed. And if you take a step back, right, with COVID, what has really happened? What has really happened is that, we used to be at our workplace like about, uh, 9 to 5 every day of the week, all weekdays, and then
Absolutely.
in the evening we used to connect with either our colleagues, like in my case, across the continents in US, and or with your friends and family. Over the weekends you would go and shop in your malls, you would go and watch movies, etc. The kids would at the same time would be going to school. Everything has changed. So what has really happened is that you are now confined to this home of yours, which you can classify as a workplace
Yes.
or an education hub or an entertainment fun place, right? When
Cinema.
you play
Yeah.
with your kids. Uh, and these shopping patterns and habits have completely changed because it's unsafe to go outside. So we are inviting the products and hence these services to our home, right? Urban Clap being an example, right? I got a haircut done last weekend, and this was the first time I was trying that experience that a barber is willing to come to my place with a very safe environment, cut my hair here, right? And do all the cleanup after that. So what has happened is it has in a way transitioned the experiential side to more higher level of convenience for us consumers.
Right.
Now let me talk a little bit about from a Lowe's perspective, what are we seeing the last 6 or 7
Please.
months. So Lowe's is a very big retail organization, right? And we have supply chains running around the world, right? For every retailer, you have to buy the products, you have to then move the products from around the world, and then you have to get it to your stores or in your FCs and then sell the products. Supply chain has disrupted completely, right? I mean, there were ports were stuck for like weeks or months, right? So all our products
Yes.
are behind in terms of when they're supposed to be arriving at the ports. What we had to do was transformation for us meant that bringing that agility forward in terms of how can I source the right products, and the definition of right products also changed dramatically, right? Because in Feb-March timeframe, a lot of the folks were not actually looking at buying home products when they came to Lowe's, right? They were looking at hygienic products, disinfectants, chemicals, cleaning agents, etc. And you would imagine that when the demand has gone up like 10, 20x in a
Yes.
matter of days, how do you react to that? Reacting to that, being in stock, being for your consumer, that is what I call transformation. Digital is only a medium, right? It has allowed you to scale at that level. If you were, I always joke like this, that if you were a one person company or a one person employee, and you are dealing with only handful of people around you in your ecosystem, you don't need any technology, right? You don't need anything. You can just very well talk to them. But why technology and hence digital transformations are important is because of the scale, how things have evolved around the world. Because my expectation is, hey, whatever I wanted yesterday, I would want it tomorrow too, but I want it more conveniently, at a cheaper
Right.
price, at the time that I choose, for it to show up on my doorstep, etc. So that is the kind of transformation that we have seen at Lowe's. Now, from a technology standpoint, I believe that technologies has been transforming for several years already,
Correct.
right? You saw the move from like large organization investing heavily in infrastructure, security, cloud, etc. Smaller organization like startups, they're coming up and offering new kind of offerings to their potential consumers. That has been in works. What this is allowed to do, as Jyoti was rightly calling out, was this has just accelerated the pace of that change or the roadmaps that we were dealing with. This has also allowed us, now if you think about it, the capacity is still the same, right? So the resources that you had at hand are still the same. They're the same folks who are doing the same job for the same number of hours. The outcomes have slightly changed though, because now you have
Correct.
been asked to ruthlessly prioritize. whatever you were planning to do in 18 months, you got to do it in 3 months. So what are the things that you're going to do? And what are the things you are going to either drop or shift to the next few months or the next few years?
Correct. That's so interesting. That is so interesting. We lost you there, Anant, for a while. Can you say something now?
Can you still?
Yeah, we can hear you
Can
now.
you hear
Please
me
go
okay?
ahead. Please go ahead. Yeah, go on. You were saying something.
No, so I was just saying that, that's how I see the pace of change and the pace of digital transformation as COVID has evolved. And, these are some of the perspectives that I would like to bring forward more in this conversation. I think the last one key point that I would also make is this, right? Transformation as a word is becoming dated in the sense that, as we were just talking about, the technology is continuously evolving. So you've got to be on your toes at all times to think about what is the next big thing coming. Where am I going to get disrupted next? For large organizations, it is important for them to hold on to their consumers that they serve with. And for startups, it is important that they are, finding new ways and means for reaching out to those same consumers or complementing the offerings in some way. Right. And both those sides are trying to hold fort, and whosoever gives up on what their consumers really need or want, they are the ones who will lose.
Absolutely. And Jyoti, that speed of change that, Anant's talking about, right? I also want to ask from Intuit's perspective, right? How did you get prepared for that speed of change after March? Did your customers react similarly? I know Anant's talking more from the consumer angle that they had then aligned supply chains. And I'm sure even in your side, you had to prepare your engineering teams for such, right?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. We had to do things that we had never done before, which is to be able to release new capabilities for our small businesses in the order of days. And one of the examples was in the US market, the president had come up with a program which was about helping small businesses overcome the loans that they had applied for. And what we wanted to do was to help our customers apply for those loans, take care of all the documentation that they need to do, and make sure they are the first few in the line to be applying, because the rule is as soon as the loan amount gets over, it's done. And that's the massive amount of prioritization that we had to do across the company. And Sasan, who is our CEO, said, if there is an ask on your team which is about helping our small businesses, drop everything else, and this is the first thing you got to do. And our teams worked across the globe, hand in hand, like a baton that you would shift from one time zone to another, to make sure that our products are ready, because these are completely different features that we were now going to work on. And the speed of delivery, it was so magical to see that the speed of delivery just became order of magnitude better in the order of few days, because there were so many people so passionately working for our small businesses. It's not that they didn't take a hit. All the small businesses across the world took massive hit with respect to their business, but it's about how much we can do as organizations to help them overcome the setback that they have just gone through.
Okay.
So it's a combination of prioritization and massive engineering that went through, with ruthless prioritization that helped us build these capabilities that help these small businesses.
Okay. Quickly to talk about it, Jyoti, I'm sticking to you, then move to Anant. How did you prepare your teams? Just talk about, did you do a scrum? When this thing was announced in March, how did you manage your teams? Agility? Because because then it talks about internal transformation for you also, right? And we can then bring out the leadership part there itself and cover this. And this question's open for you too.
Yep. So the first thing, obviously, as you talked about, is the first thing is to do ruthless prioritization. Just take everything off from the teams that could possibly wait, and pull in the things that are needed. So that's the first step. And then the next thing is to be able to do this in a very small baby steps, in a true agile manner, that you find out what are the minimal things that are needed, because as we are developing, the government is changing rules as we speak, as we build. So there's a lot of work that we need to do fast, but we need to do in a small baby chunks manner, such that they could go out. And what we also invested in was not to build things from scratch, because that takes time, and reuse what we have existing in the company. And what that means is that we take a hit in collaboration, because you need to collaborate with multiple people rather than one team building a capability. So that's the third thing, that when you focus on reusing the components components, then collaboration is the price of collaboration is what we need to pay. And that's something that we did in a very fast manner, that yes, we will go across the board, whoever is needed, will pull them in, large teams. We built smaller scrum teams in individual locations. And then we used to do on a daily basis, something that a lot of technologists are aware is something called as a scrum of scrum, which is multiple scrums are delivering their individual capabilities. And then there is something called as a scrum of scrum, where leaders from individual teams come up and then we decide, okay, this is what we did. This can go to production tomorrow. This needs something else from you. So a lot of things. And then the last thing is on the people side is that when we are working at this speed, then having the right people and keeping them passionate, keeping them enthusiastic about what's needed for our users, that would be the last thing that gets into this recipe.
Anant, I'm sure I'd like to hear the Lowe's perspective on this too. That is phenomenal what Jyoti said. I'm sure you would also think similar, being an engineering leader.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think whatever Jyoti said, I'm pretty sure that most of the large organizations must be doing a lot of those things exactly right? And let me take a step back and let me maybe talk a little bit from a transformation standpoint, like how did we approach it? How did we go about it?
Yes.
So let's think about what transformation really, what does it constitute? It constitutes, in the erstwhile world, we always said about people, process, and technology, right? Those are the three key pillars that would move the mountains if an organization has understood that the right way, right? I'll extend it by a couple more, right? Data, of course, is the fourth one now, the fourth pillar. The fifth one, which is the least talked about, but probably the most important in terms of transformation, is the organizational maturity. Is the organization ready for a change? Because the change starts with people, and do they have the right mindset to adopt with the new ways of working or not? You would imagine that a lot of traditional companies are trying to swing the needle by trying to work like startups. Whereas a lot of startups company, which are mature startups, they are trying to move the needle towards large organizations to understand how are they able to manage the process at scale. Right? So there are pros and cons of both. Idea being that a large organization, how can it evolve into a startup by not losing its ethos? With that said, with that context, now in terms of Lowe's, what we ended up doing was first really understanding that COVID, what does it really mean for us? I talked a bit about disruptions in the supply chain space and hence the need of the products that we would need in the stores. The type of products that we would need also differs. The consumer's shopping patterns and shopping habits also completely changed, right? Because nobody's now walking into the stores and hordes to pick up products or buy products, but some of them were trying to engage with us online through our apps, etc. Some of them wanted to say, hey, I want this product, I want it right now, but I don't want to come into your store. So can you bring the product outside the store? I can intimate you. So, think of it like this, right? In Western countries, you would have seen you have a lot of drive-through chains.
Correct.
The concept was introduced by the likes of McDonald's and all, right? That you stand in the queue for 30 to 60 seconds, say, hey, I need this burger, I need this Coke, etc. And then you drive through to the window to pick up the product. How can you bring that shopping pattern onto retail was kind of the challenge that we were dealing with here.
Right.
So what we ended up doing was first starting from a people standpoint, putting together the sense of urgency and having a call to action. Behind the scenes, just like we would do on any event wherein we are seeing abnormal behavior in terms of either traffic patterns, etc., we put together a war room wherein you have representatives for all the different functions, right? Who then can understand that, am I failing on the .com side? Am I failing on the app side? Am I failing on the supply chain side? Am I failing on the merchandising side? Am I failing on the store operation side, etc.? And the biggest challenge that you have in large organizations is the transaction cost between the micro organizations which are created in. So this war room essentially breaks that, because now you have brought the leaders for all those functions together, right? So that is step number 2. So after you have the call to action, you have a war room. Now you try to figure out that how is my demand shifted or anticipated demand? What is the forecast looking like? And if my normal ways and means of getting the products into the store are not possible, what else can I do? So I'll give you a couple of examples just to illustrate upon the point of views. For example, we source a lot of products from Asia.
Yes.
And typically the lead time to order these products or buy these products from our suppliers is like 3 to 4 months ahead of time, because that's how long it takes for them to make the products, put that on a ship, get it to a port in the United States, get it, moved to a trailer to our stores, et cetera, right? So that's the lead time. Now, in this case, of course, you don't have that lead time. You don't have the luxury of that. So what we did was we ended up using a lot of our relationships with the local suppliers, asking them to either increase the quantity of our buys, or asking them to work with us to produce stuff that we will not be able to otherwise buy from elsewhere, right? So we, in a way, we actually insourced a lot of those product shipments from our vendors to our in-house, right? So that's one example. The other example that I can offer you is in retail, we have been talking a lot about omni-channel. What it really means is this. It means that you can buy via any form factor. As a consumer, I can buy via any form factor that Lowe's have. It could be a website, it could be a social handle, it could be an app, it could be, of course, in our stores, etc. And I offer you the same experience everywhere. So what we ended up doing was we ended up, making this initiative called Curbside, wherein you can order it from your phone, and in about 90 minutes or so, you can drive through our store to pick your products up without having any contact with any of the Lowe's associates. So, we would automatically know that the customer is approaching us via GPS and so on. They would park into a driveway that we have allocated for this curbside pickups, right? So we would know exactly where are those cars in those big parking lots that we have at Lowe's store. Fantastic. An associate would they would know who you are, so they would be able to bring your products outside and load it into your trunk of the car without you even having to talk to anybody about anything or coming in proximity to a Lowe's associate. So
and this would probably benefit all your senior citizens who shop at Lowe's, right? And it's beneficial to them.
Absolutely. Wow. In fact, because of some of these initiatives, we have actually seen an uptick in our sales versus trying to hold on to our customers. We have seen an uptick because now we have been able to talk more about, hey, your home is the new workplace, or your entertainment complex, or your education hub, etc. And our homes are not equipped by default to take care of those things. So I had to invest in my own home here also, right? That I had to buy let's say a new desk, a new chair, because now I am working from home. My wife is working from home. I have a small kid. Now the kid has to, do all their regular chores and playthings, etc., which we were not prepared for. So we invest in our homes. I'm very sure that you guys did the same. Our consumers were doing just the same. So we also use this as an opportunity to not just hold on to our customers, but how do we upsell and how do we make them successful with their shopping priorities, at the same time helping our business, our entire ecosystem of sorts, with our associates, with our suppliers, etc.
And so digital transformation in the end is about customers, right? Jyoti, like Anant gave us a very good, it's like you've got to understand every step of the direction, how consumers are moving. And for you, obviously customers will come and say, you're a digital first company, Intuit, obviously. And people say, hey, I've gone to the cloud, but that's not enough, right? Jyoti, you would say as an engineer, going to the cloud is table stakes today. But do SMBs understand that? Do they, or because everybody is price sensitive, right? Do they still bargain for price when it comes to SaaS products? Who should be taking decisions? Should the business owner take the decisions, or should I employ a CTO if I'm a 100 crore company, and then think about these processes like, whatever Anant mentioned, then, working with a financial product like Intuit? How would you suggest they should go about it?
Right. Before we answer that question, I just wanted to point out that when Anant was talking about these war rooms themselves have gone through a transformation. So instead of flying people over from all over the world to our parent locations like US in both of our cases, we used to spend millions of dollars every month in travel, and then we couldn't imagine doing war rooms without flying people over. And now everything is happening virtually. We are saving money.
And have people been productive? And have people been productive in both your cases?
Yeah. It's about people being productive, and it's about managing this systems without being physically in the same room. So digital transformation is touching our left, right, center, everywhere, right? Like it's just not about customers, it's about how we are doing this business and how our employees are managing it as well. So,
Okay. Do you see a downside to it, or do you see people getting back because social animals? Do you see eventually be meeting? Because that's a very interesting point you made. I want to stick with it. Is that going to change at all? I mean, like you said, we will save millions on travel if people are productive. Doing this way of meeting each other, great. But do you see that having an impact as an engineer? Do you study these things? What's going to happen?
It is tiring people out big time, and that tiredness, the exhaustion of being in front of the computer. Not, we are human animals, right? We do need to interact with other people, and that part for some time it's okay because we are very resilient as a workforce, right? So we adjust, but it is impacting employees. There is no doubt about it, and we are, even though we are saying keeping slots, make sure that you have switch on, switch off. It is still there. I mean, we see it all around. Like I see in our company every day when people are making these choices that are very hard to make. And as a leader, my heart breaks when somebody makes that hard choice to either leave the workforce or take some part-time because they're so capable. But it's just that it's hard to do it this way. Yes, it is being productive. Yes, it is saving millions as well. But we got to manage with the balance as well. So I wouldn't say that we can go completely zero on travel or go back to where we were, because that's a learning that we did have to spend so much, but we got to settle somewhere in between and take care of both.
That's well said. Now to the question on the cloud and advice to young businesses getting into the cloud. And they often struggle with, for example, I'm glad that Anant is at Lowe's. You're both are senior engineers. You're at Intuit, right? And these are global organizations. But how should an Indian SMB 100 crores? I've seen over the last 5 years a lot of D2C brands have gone from 0 to 500 crores, like Boat, for example, the headphone that I'm using. It's a 600 crore company without any processes. Even the entrepreneur admits that it's just exploded. He wants to think about digital transformation. How do they go about it? Just I mean, this is away from Intuit question actually, but just as an engineer kind of question. This will be open to both because I think Anant can also take it, Boat being a consumer company. You guys can talk about it without alluding to Boat as a business, as just an hypothetical example.
Yeah. I think the first thing that I would think about the SMBs is that they got to think about the priorities and what is really coming in the way of doing the business itself, right? Like if I'm spending a ton of time as a business owner in scaling because my product is now famous in the market and my site is frequently going down. Remember Twitter of 2002, every day there would be like a big news that Twitter went down today. And that would be an indication, or probably a little bit before, when I need to make that call that this is not something that as an SMB I could manage with what I have right now, and I need an expertise, and therefore we need to invest in it. And I wouldn't say that it needs to happen on day 1, day 5, day 10. It needs to happen when the product is established in the market, because that's the first thing as an SMB I need to do to make sure that I'm established with a capability which is durable, right? Like it cannot be something that I put it out in the market and Vishal, you go and make it a sibling of it in 5 days, because that won't be a durable business to build. So focus on building the durable business first, and then when you realize that yes, you're getting into the challenge of scale or acquisition of customers as well, or if I'm getting into the cash crunch, then let's employ some financial advisor and figure out how to get the money. But it would be in a phased manner, and definitely not something that me as an engineer would suggest somebody to do on a day 1.
Nice. Anand, you said a lot of your sourcing comes from China, and I'm sure all these are SMBs. Are they digital first companies today? Or are they changing?
So, no, they have been digital. So they have been digital first companies, but I can also share some perspective in the Indian context.
Yes, please. Because that'd be lovely. That'd be lovely.
So 2-part, right? So I think you had the 2-part question. The first was more around the cloud side, like how are they thinking about the cloud and so on, right? See, at the end of the day, I think I'll just reiterate once again, from a consumer standpoint, consumers don't care whether you are on cloud, you are on on-prem, you're on edge, you are on rain, or you're on grass, who cares, right? All they care about is can they do with you what they really want to do to get the value that they are wanting to get, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Great technology, in my mind, is always invisible.
Yes.
Google search as an example, right? When was the last time that you thought about that behind that simple search bar, simple HTML page that you can spin off like in 10 minutes and that search bar, who thought that, I mean, what are the complicated algorithms running behind the scenes? And now we are at a point wherein my mom and dad are also using Google search to understand what is happening in COVID, where are the trends, where are they going up, where are they going down, where's the second wave, third wave, I don't know, nth wave going on, right? So as consumers, all you care about is the input and the output, right? Where I can ask the question in this example, and where will I get the answer? Not anything in between is a black box. You can apply
Right.
this analogy to any logic, and I'm pretty sure in most cases it will hold good. Now let me talk about SMB specifically. So
Yes.
how I think about it. See, as human beings first, right? We are social animals, and social animals who are very, very adaptable. I'll take a couple of examples. Smartphones. We have about 700 million plus smartphones in India now. How many of you
Yes.
think that are people who are tech savvy, literate enough to understand? But 700 million people, we are talking more than 50% of the people using smartphones. They are all able to
Yeah.
use the smartphones well,
Correct.
perhaps, right? Hence
Correct.
they're sticking to it. That's one example. Second is, think about all the large scale government initiatives. Aadhaar, classic example,
Yes.
right? It was the biggest digital transformation exercise that not just us, but anybody in the world would have ever seen, right? 1 billion plus Aadhaar cards issued to the consumers. We were able to manage all of that. But in the microcosm of who was actually, building those platforms out versus who were consuming those out. So from a consumer standpoint, you don't care so much. That's my point. Now, from an SMB standpoint, let's talk about that, right? You have about 4 crore SMBs in India, give or take, right?
Yes. Absolutely. Correct.
4 to 5. I was, and if you look at most of those, I'll take a few examples, right, just to put the point across. The likes of Zomato, Grofers, on the restaurant food side, one on the grocery side.
Yeah.
They have been able to source products from multiple restaurants or grocery stores who had no clue about how technology worked, but they have all been able to get on the bandwagon by just
Right.
because they thought, as a consumer, all they care about is, can I sell more with the capital expenditure which has already been invested in, but with less amount of operational expenditure? Can I sell more and make more, right? That's the whole idea of what an SMB is trying to do, right? Any opportunity that you show them where they will be able to sell more and help make more, they will latch onto it. The challenge where it comes is, what are the transaction costs of adopting that, and what is the surety that they will be successful if they invest in it?
The ROI.
Right.
Yeah.
So those are the impediments to solve for any organization, any startup, any large organization who is able to mobilize those things and commoditize them. Cloud being one of the examples, right? Because in cloud's case, what the large organization or might say is, okay, we'll put everything on the cloud. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to install anything. It's just a website for you. Just go in there and do your stuff and you're done, right? In those cases, you have brought down the transaction cost so much that these SMB players, they don't have a choice anymore. They got to get in. They got to get on the bandwagon because it is beneficial for them with a very less amount of risk. Because if it is not working for me, I will know it like in a few days or weeks versus months or years as it used to be historically.
Wow. The entire distribution transaction costs are gone. So because it's not physical anymore. Yeah. Wow.
As they say, fall in love with the problem, not with the solution. So don't start with saying that, oh, I'm going to do this, but the problem went somewhere else. So let's focus on solving the problem, commoditize that, and then the solution will come as part of the journey itself.
I'm glad you both are talking about this in a similar line. I mean, a lot of companies come to me and say, hey, I've grown to a particular size. Should I deploy an AI application, right? I sometimes get confused, right? I mean, they're buying a tool because somebody is selling you AI, but what do you do with it? I think that's a common problem that we're facing. There's a lot of, I wouldn't say mis-selling, but misinformation running around about products, right? So if they deploy products, I mean, Anant, in your case, when the vendors get deployed on your product, right, as Lowe's backend technologies with SMBs, when they link to you, is it an open API world that they work with? And how are they reacting to that? And do they think about, like you said, even for the SMBs, right? You should not let them think about AI or anything. Is it transaction smooth? Jyoti, this question will move to you also because they're very important so that people understand this. Anand, go on.
Yeah. So I'll just first say something which might sound a bit controversial, right? I think AI is over. Most of the companies, they are trying to say that, hey, let me grab the data first. Let me have that.
Yeah.
Let me store it over a period of few years, and then I will understand how will I leverage the information that I have now collated. That is exactly the opposite way of what you should be doing. Right? What you should be doing is understanding what the problem is, because the data, we have so much of data every day. I mean, I don't even know that. I mean, there is probably several TBs of data that we have at Lowe's. And if I start to capture everything, I don't know how will I ever be able to maintain or manage all of that? And how will I be able to mine that for some true intelligence?
Yes.
So the idea is starting with the problem and then understanding what is in that context, what is it that you need to capture in the first place, right? What are you trying to really improve? And AI is nothing more than another medium that offers you an idea or that offers you a way of solving a problem that you have at hand, wherein you have some tolerance, because it's not always a true or a false in cases of AI, right? It could be in between also with the confidence intervals, etc. And I'll not go into the technicalities, but what I mean essentially is that you have an appetite of going wrong. Now, in the supply chain cases also, it's you can just put that same analogy there, that if you are into manufacturing products as an example, from a quality standpoint, what is my fault tolerance? Is it like 1 in 100,000 products which I make, or 1 in 100 million products which I make, or 1 in 100, right? I mean, they have a very, very different, these are very, very different problems in terms of scale, and very, very different ways to solve these problems. In our case, we work very closely with our vendors on the quality side, quality compliance, because we also are very ethical in terms of how we do business, which is we don't want like forced bonded laborers who work somewhere in some part of the world and trying to build something for us that we can source very cheaply and then products to our customers, right? We don't want to do that, because we owe it to our community, because our success is as much dependent on our community as they are dependent on us for the products they buy from us.
Well said. Jyoti, you agree with it.
It has to be a win-win, and you have to think of that microcosm in a way that you are solving for, and to your other question around open APIs, open APIs and so on, right? That is very, very important, because you are onboarding vendors day in and day out. You can have all the processes in place, but the processes then takes days or weeks unless you unleash them, right? Because our workforce on our side, I'll never imagine that we would have scale the workforce depending on the vendors we work with. Think of Amazon as a classic example, right? They deal with probably like millions of vendors, onboard like thousands every day. They don't have guys like who sit there day in and day out trying to onboard them. So we do something similar. We have commoditized in a way that anybody who wants to do business with us can come in and can look through our vendor portal, go through the steps that we need from a compliance standpoint, because I have to be able to trust you if I'm going to do business with you. I'm going to be able to ask for references of proof points, right? Just like think of it like this, right? When I get into a relationship with somebody, right? And when I choose that, hey, I'm going to work with you, or I'm going to be your friend, or, et cetera, there is some level of trust which is needed first. This is that, those are the things that we think about when we are dealing with vendors. So we are not blindly like scaling things up, because we want to make sure that the experience working between us and the vendors are just as good as what we expect when we work with our communities or our consumers.
Okay. Jyoti, I think you'd echo what he's saying. And
absolutely.
I mean, please go on. I mean, your thoughts on AI, open APIs, please go on.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with Open API first. Yeah. And I totally agree with Anant that the only way to scale at which our companies work in is by actually having a standard, by having an open API and publishing it and invite these vendors or financial institutions in the case of Intuit who want to work with us. And because these are like 30,000 plus financial institutions across the world from where our customers' data need to be pulled in or exchanged with. And it's just not an open API, which is a company specific. In some of the industries, it even makes sense, like in the case of financial industry, to make it an open API, which is a standard for the industry itself. So that if there are plaids or any other companies, because for our customers also, it has to be seamless, right? Ultimately, we have to think about them, that they don't want to be thinking, oh my God, if I'm doing business with Intuit, this is how I need to do. If I'm doing it with somebody else, the interface completely changes and we confuse the hell out, and nobody wins in this way, right? Customer doesn't win, the businesses don't win either. And I'm so proud to talk about that one of the initiatives in this open API space was taken by Indian government, and none of the industries like in the US or European, they're still far behind. And India is thinking of an account aggregator. Exactly, the account aggregator stack, wherein the customers would just be setting up pipes between themselves and their financial institutions, and the data flows through across multiple different companies or institutions like Intuit in between in a fully secure manner. And I feel that's a win-win for vendors, it's win-win for customers and for businesses like Intuit. And it's so nice to have our own government thinking of open API and spec in such a manner, because to Anand's point, commoditize it and do it at the scale of the banks and the institutions that we have in India. Because if we have solved the problem here, just like Aadhaar, it's going to be very simple to solve anywhere else as well. So that's the
No, it's well said. I didn't look at it that way at all. Actually, India is creating a logistics stack, a health stack. Anant said Aadhaar is the biggest project in the world, the biometric thing. I think nowhere in the world. I think engineers have a lot going on in our country, and we sometimes don't give it a shout out. I agree with you. And your thoughts on AI, please. A lot of entrepreneurs will ask me that too. Go on.
No, I agree with Anand. It's a beaten to death term, and it's sorry, I have a power outage.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You want to open the curtain at the back for the light, or you want to wait for a couple of seconds?
I'll wait for a couple seconds, and it's raining here as well now.
Yes.
So I'll move near the window.
Yeah, it's fine now. It's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So on the AI side, to Anand's point, it's the world of data, and if you want to look for data, it is everywhere, no matter where you want to look. And the problem that gets into that if you start with the data, and I'm going to pretty much repeat what Anand said, you're going to get lost. We got to fall in love with the problem, what we are solving, and then find out what data do we need, rather than just keep getting into this drag hole of collecting every single thing possible, and then sifting it through becomes another problem, rather than the problem that we originally started with. So it is important. There's nothing like using the data to help our customers with their behaviors, but it won't be very flourishing if we don't start with the customer view first and start with, oh, I think I should build an ML model. That won't.
Okay. I have two last questions to you. I think Jyoti, you can go back to the original plan. I think the power's back up. Yes. These two questions around, I think this is an audience curated thing. People talk about cybersecurity after COVID. I don't know whether they're having an anxiety attack or something. I have not had your story has not had a cyber attack. Everybody, because we have so many people using our platform. But people have this anxiety over cybersecurity. I don't know why. Should they invest in it? And finally, R&D for both of you. How important is it? And type of engineers that you want, type of knowledge that they should have. Jyoti, we'll start with you. Go on. Anant, please keep that in mind.
Yep, absolutely. I think it is needed. Until we lose something personally, we don't realize that cybersecurity is important. So good for you, Vishal, that you haven't faced it, and I hope it stays that way. But I'll tell you, as late as last weekend, there's a bank called Robinhood. I don't know if you guys have heard of it.
USA.
It's in the US, and that bank is a no-touch bank. Like there's no building. It's just a virtual bank, right? And they got attacked. and people actually lost money. And when they
Wow.
lost money, then because the hackers they did some transactions and took money out from, and it keeps on happening in the financial world. And so from the industry where I come from, there
Money is
is no
everything. You have to
question.
be there.
Exactly. Actually, more than money, Vishal, I would say trust is everything. Trust
Wow.
with the company that you
Yeah.
work with, trust with the bank that you bank with, and have your business run with, right? So I think it's the trust that I believe is the biggest thing, because money, I as a company can repay to the customer, but would that customer come back to me to do business one more time? I'm not sure, because I would think, yeah, if they could lose my money one time, maybe they could do it one more time as well. So I think it's super duper
Okay.
important when we are dealing with people's trust, their financial data on which their lives would depend on, and if
Fantastically
we
said.
get compromised, it won't
Yes.
be good for our customer.
Yes. I absolutely agree. It's more mission critical there, and you've got to protect your consumer data. About the talent, please. What type of talent are you looking for?
Right. I think I have probably a different perspective on talent, that I, in particular, do not look for technology skills. To me, it is mindset, which is supremely important. Can somebody learn? How can they work with other people? The people aspects of it. How fast can you transform yourself? The technologies are going to come and go. Yesterday it was something else. Today is going to be something else. Tomorrow, something different. So the technologies will keep on changing. How fast can somebody be resilient to the skills that they bring in is most important. And the second thing is the fundamentals, because the
Yes.
fundamentals of computer science, how to solve problem, general aspect of problem solving, leadership skills, those are some things that are ingrained in the talent that we hire. So I would say, more than the technology, this versus that, it's about their attitude.
Okay.
It's about the fundamentals.
Okay. Anant, over to you.
Thanks. So yeah, so I would agree with most of what Jyoti said there, right? So I think there are three-part question, right? So let me try to backtrack and see if I can
Yes.
answer all three of them. First one was around cybersecurity. So, cybersecurity has always been an important aspect for any organization which really cares about the data that gets,
Wow.
transacted or transmitted within their ecosystem. Some more than others, because if you are in a banking sector, as an example, you might have to comply with some norms, etc. Versus if you are in a retail, you might have different norms, but similar kind of security compliances, etc. Right? So hence it is all true. Now, what has happened again in COVID is, I was just thinking about it, from a COVID lens, what has happened? What has happened is this, that you were in a microcosm earlier, right? Which is your company. So you would go to work every day and you would have like your van and all of your security policies, etc., which sit on top of that microcosm of sorts that you have created internally. So internally, you are all secure at all times. It is only that when you are penetrating that through the internet, through your a VPN, etc., to elsewhere onto your servers, to cloud, etc., that's where you had to think about security.
Okay.
Now, what has happened is all of our home offices have actually fragmented our microcosm of workspace completely, right? Because I
Yes.
don't have any workspace anymore. It is our home. So every individual is kind of a workspace by itself. So from a security standpoint, if you think about it, the problem has actually gone up many folds. So companies have to definitely invest much more in terms of staying safe and secure. I'm sure that a lot of them are already doing it. And if not, here is another statement that I don't know how true it is, but I firmly believe that it is accurate, which is most CIOs get fired because of cybersecurity breaches
Okay. Wow.
than because of incompetency.
Okay.
Right, so you
Wow.
would imagine that how important it is to be secure, because that's a given, right? Nobody's asking that, hey, when you transact, let's say with a bank, ICICI, HDFC, etc., you're not asking in their app that, hey, are you secure or not? That's your fundamental
Yeah.
belief and assumption that you are, right? And if you are
Correct.
not, would they ever want to bank with you again, knowing the threat that you pose with them?
Like
Right?
Jyoti said, nobody would go back. Absolutely.
Exactly right, right. So to Jyoti's point, the trust aspect or element is important here. So that's on the cybersecurity side. Now, the next thing that you talked about is around R&D and innovation,
Yes.
perhaps, right? So
R&D
again,
and talent.
in this R&D and talent, right? So first, let's talk about R&D, right? So in R&D, what has happened is companies will continue to be innovative if they want to be relevant in the changing times that they are operating in. If they are not catering to their consumers and moving with their consumer needs, they will become irrelevant very, very soon, right? The other thing is most of the companies get disrupted not by their competitors that we watch day in and day out, but by some of these unknown companies or startups that we have never heard of. But one day you realize that all of your traffic is actually started to shift, and it has shifted so heavily, and they're so ahead of the curves in that aspect, or or that element, that you don't have a way out.
Wow.
So it is very important for organizations to continue to invest in R&D and innovation, to be at the bleeding edge of whatever their consumers expect them out of. And that R&D innovation could very well be in terms of technology, but it could very well be in terms of understanding the consumer behavior, the shift in consumer mindsets. Like we talked about COVID times, all I'm thinking about is how safe it is to shop now. I'm thinking less about the price, right? But I'm thinking about the safety and convenience much more now, right? Which is a very different element to how it was 6 months back, especially in India, which is such a price sensitive market that I would spend my entire day, but I would go and buy the product from the cheapest place I can.
Yeah, we've all been in those conversations with a lot of companies. Yes.
Exactly right. And the third thing is talent. In talent, I have and talent could mean very different things in terms of like what is the levels that you hire for, what type of a job you're trying to fill. For example, an engineer versus a product guy, right? Versus a non-technical role, etc. Because I hire for all three of them. Now, in my case specifically, I only look for three things, irrespective of the level that they are at. And then depending on where they're going to come into the organization, you have some nuances that you want to check the box and make sure that they will fit in those roles, right? So the three things that I personally look at is attitude.
Okay.
It is very important that people are personable in a way that others want to work with you and learn from you just as much as you want to learn from them. Because companies become successful not because you hire great individuals, but you have great teams.
Yeah, so you got to learn how to share. That's what you're saying.
Yes, so that comes with attitude. So that's my number one. My second is aptitude, right? You can call it like analytical thinking, street smartness, etc., etc., especially in the product roles, because I hire there most often. Aptitude really becomes a key differentiating factor for me about how do you think about problems, how are you trying to break down the problems, do you have a good handle on the quantitative side as much as on the qualitative side. Because as we are seeing, there has been a shift from qualitative to quantitative, and now somewhere in between, right? Because IQ and EQ, they are both becoming very, very important. So
Nice.
aptitude is the number two. Number three for me, specifically, is the problem solving skill set. In the product world, I would call it product thinking, but we are talking about product engineering or operations. You are facing problems which you may not have faced in the past. So the idea is not to know how to solve a problem which has been given to you in the past, but the idea is to know whether you have the right approach. Can you come up with the right frameworks when thrown into those problems? And can you approach it from a different point of view or a different lens? And you want to create that diversity in the organizations, because if folks have different types of problem solving or product thinking skill sets, then they complete you in a way, right? By bringing their diverse perspectives or opinions. So this I pair with diversity as well, not just in terms of thinking about, hey, I want to hire a computer science grad, or I want to hire an MBA for product, etc., right? But maybe go a little bit more diverse. Now, as a country, India generally hasn't been very adaptive, if I am being very open and honest, to having non-computer science or non-engineers or non-MBAs getting into product engineering roles, right? If you go and look at the West, it's very, very different. I have colleagues and peers, etc., who have done their, who have done their education in history, geology, geography, what have you, right? And when you ask them that, hey, what brought you to what you're doing right now? What brought you here? It was the inner need or the voice, as we say, inner voice, that I was really fascinated by how the technology is evolving, how digitization is happening, how IT is improving lives, right? How we are making things more convenient, right? So that's the inner voice that they appeal to. In India, now in the Indian context, I think we still have a way to go there to learn from the West what it could really mean in our context, because I think that is the missing element here, the diversity around how you build a whole a team and bring different perspectives onto the table and then drive problems in that fashion. Because a lot of the problem statements that we have seen in the past are going to be have been very different what I anticipate is going to happen going forward. So the idea is not to know that the skill set of that and then apply that, lift and shift, but the idea is to now think about, can you start from first defining what that problem really is, right? In most cases it will be very, very qualitative, because not all of your consumers are thinking very analytically at all times. They're not thinking in numbers, right? So they are thinking very qualitative. They're thinking about experience, about convenience, etc. So how do you offer to them, and how do you understand the problem statements and define those problems and then bring them in to solve for them?
That's well said, both of you. We're running out of time, and I thank you for being on the show. But more importantly, right, this conversation has been fascinating. And next time, what I'm going to do is, this is such a high level discussion. Probably have a bunch of startups sit around the conversation and probably interact with the both of you, right? That would have been phenomenal. They could have laid out the problems in front of you and you could have shared with them. Probably we'll do that next time. And this is so good, guys. I hope you really learn about digital transformation. It's not just a word you use and you go have a conversation, buy a few tools or applications. It's so much more. And I hope this talk helped you, this chat helped you. Write to us, keep asking the questions. I'll get Jyoti and Anant to answer them for you. And if you're interested, and if 100 of you get together and you want to chat with them, we'll organize that too. Okay. So Jyoti, Anant, thank you so much, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it was an honor to be here.
It was great interacting with you guys and talking about digital transformation. Thank you.
And that's a take. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jyoti. Thank you, Anant. See, we'll definitely get this going. I mean, for example, I would have rather had a bunch of startups sitting here and said, hey, I did these things. Can I roll that back now? That this is a very high level discussion. And I kind of realized that this is a feedback that I'm going to give to my office, that we got to make this interactive, because you guys have built products and people sometimes just buy them and leave them. And I have so many SMBs in the automobile segment buy an ERP or a CRM. First 3 months they use it, and after that, because they can't figure out, they've dumped it. And by then they've sunk 30-40 lakhs onto a product. So I'd rather host you again next time. Thank you so much, man. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you. Have a great weekend. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.